Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Pitney Bowes webinar preparing for peak shipping 2020. I am Aaron, your host. Your featured speakers are Rick Hernandez and Justin Kramer. Rick Hernandez is Vice President of Business Development and Commercial Innovation for Pitney Bowes Global E-commerce. Rick has over 20 years of experience in technology, shipping, and logistics, having worked at successful startups that were acquired by Infor, Stamps.com, Newell Rubbermaid, and SunGard. Rick has 8 patents and was previously head of research and development, customer service, and business development at Indicia. Rick graduated from Stanford University and resides in Half Moon Bay, California, where he lives with his wife and kids and where he serves as a planning commissioner. Justin Kramer is co-founder and head of sales for ProShip, the top enterprise shipping platform that executes billions of compliant, high-speed shipping labels on behalf of its customers that include Macy's, QVC, Kohl's, and many, many more. So a great pairing of speakers today. They have lots of fantastic content coming up, so listen in. And with that, Justin, I hand things over to you to begin.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. Now, today we're going to cover a lot of different topics, and a lot of this is going to cover the data that Pitney Bowes has been collecting. Today, though, really is going to be about what's been happening with COVID, what's been happening in the last 6 months, and how that is affecting our systems, how that is affecting our customers, and how that is affecting the way we're doing business. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and just get us right into it. Rick, let me pull you in here, and let's get started with the COVID-19 paradigm shift.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, and thank you, Aaron, for the fantastic introduction. And it is indeed a beautiful day here, so thank you all for joining us. Unfortunately, we're in a time where we're dealing with a lot of economic turmoil directly related to coronavirus. It's really shifted where, when, and how we buy. And what we're seeing is those retailers who respond to this and adapt are starting to thrive. So what we've done is, and how we've collected this data is we've gone out and conducted a survey of consumers, 2,800 adults prior to COVID-19, and we conducted a similar survey post-COVID, end of March, beginning of April of this year, and we collected feedback on a number of questions so that we could gain insights into consumers' behavior patterns towards retailers. So we have, before we get into some of the results of our COVID survey, I think we're going to turn things over to all of you for a poll question. Aaron? What's interesting, it's a different distribution than what I would have expected. I think most of us are seeing, most of the attendees here are seeing either modest growth, 10 to 25% growth year over year, but there's a handful of folks who are seeing explosive growth, over 100% year over year. I think it's pretty, but there's not a lot in between. So you're either having a pretty good year for the most part, or you're having a fantastic year. I'd like to double click on some of those folks who are having fantastic years, because when we can spend a few cycles on that. Justin, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my thoughts were pretty much the same. I was just sitting there thinking, it seems like a lot of people, the vast majority, are having a nice growth tick. Probably that's due to more people shopping online. But realistically, I'm kind of curious as to how many of this is a problem in disguise, where they're trying to figure out how do we get all of these packages out the door, how do we maintain customer satisfaction, especially for that 18% that has seen their volume more than double. And that's, I think, between this webinar and the next 2 webinars we've got planned, we might be able to cover a lot of that for those companies that are having trouble with these increases.
It's also interesting that we have a few companies who are seeing a decrease or flat year over year. I'm curious as to how many of those folks are actually in the B2B space. That might be part of what's happening there, because I've certainly seen other B2B providers and retailers having flat years. So those are interesting things that we can dig into. All right, getting back to some of the survey results that we've been talking about. So one of the things that we've uncovered as one of our survey questions is this idea of what's happened to consumer preferences. That is, how have people's buying habits changed as it relates to the in-store experience? And so we asked this question, how many of you, how at all have your delivery and shipping preferences changed from prior to the corona outbreak for the following products? So we've got a whole series of categories. And the green is, I used to prefer in-store, and now I prefer online. And some people say, I always preferred online and I still prefer online. So what you see here is you've got a segment of people, smaller segment of people who've always preferred to be online. But you've got this big chunk of folks, 30% in some categories like toys, hobbies, gifts, apparel, where now overwhelmingly more than 50%, nearly 50% of your consumers prefer to shop online. This is a paradigm shift. And this is something you really need to pay close attention to. There's also another question we asked is, for each of the following steps in the e-commerce process, select the activity that evokes the most similar emotional reaction. So the question is, does this make you feel like you're taking a relaxing vacation? Is this Hawaii experience for you? It makes my life easy. Or is this experience like getting a root canal? It makes my life hard and difficult and unpleasant. So, when we look at things, consumers' preferences around delivery notifications shot up. Dramatic increase, and consumers already liked getting delivery notifications. They like it even more now than ever. It's been a big shift. Same thing for delay notification. People really, really get frustrated if something is delayed. So this to them is like a root canal experience. It's really negative. They don't want to see delays to their shipping. People love free shipping. There's been an increase in that positive sentiment around, how does this make my life easier and better? The other thing that I think is really interesting and something for everybody to focus on is two things. One, if you send the wrong product to your customer, or damaged items, 70% of consumers consider this to be like getting a root canal. It's a super negative experience. And then you throw onto that, do you have a long wait for your return refunds? You've got a double root canal. You're really killing your consumers when you have this type of experience. So you really need to think about what happens from a post-purchase consumer experience. How are you managing returns? Is it an easy experience? Because stuff goes wrong. Everybody has problems delivering packages. There's always going to be a few customers, but you may not be able to keep that customer if you don't manage their experience after the purchase has been completed. So one of the examples in terms of how buying patterns have shifted, this is actually a store, the Posh Moon in Half Moon Bay, and my friend Monica owns this shop. She's owned it for many years, and she's figured out her little niche. She's got her consumers in our little town. They go into her store and they buy her product. Her store is shuttered. Now she has people who want to buy her product, but she has to get it to them. So she had to go and build a new website so that she could do her shipping. She had to, or so that she could capture the orders from her customers. Then she had to figure out how to get them to those customers. So she had to come up with a whole new workflow, reimagine how she engages with her customers. She had to go build product catalogs, things that she hadn't done before. She had to address that because consumers are staying at home, they're shopping online more, their buying habits have changed, their expectations have changed. And it's not just the small shops, on Main Street. Traditional brick and mortars are really struggling. They're having a hard time changing their business model. And a lot of these consumer product goods companies, the distribution channel they used to use to get product to consumers, those distribution channels aren't working the same way. So as an example, if I go back to that poll survey that we asked everybody about, we were asking about how has your volume been impacted. This is what we see, right? This year, This is the volume for the digital portion of our business. And what we're seeing is year-over-year growth that's just off the charts. So if you look around week 12 or week 13, it's just a hockey stick straight up in terms of the volume that's going through our platform from our customers. And these are people who are, for the most part, using the U.S. Postal Service to do a priority mail label. We have other carrier mixes in there, but that's what this represents here is the growth we've seen in our network. And it's been pretty level. I mean, it's dropped off a little bit, but now what we're starting to see as we get into the month of October coming up very soon, we're starting to see a curve that looks like the traditional e-commerce shipping curve. So we're starting to get back into a pattern of normal. Like normally in October, this is where we start to see that slight spike up. And our forward trends, our leading indicators, when we look at our data, tell us that we're going to see the same type of pattern for shipping season in terms of the volume. But one of the things that's really important is if this curve sticks like this and follows a traditional pattern, if we don't do something to break it up, it's going to potentially overwhelm all of the carriers. In fact, this is why if you look at what Amazon's done, moving Prime Day to the beginning, much, much earlier, the point of doing this and putting it, instead of doing it in the summer, having this fall Prime Day, the point of this is to spread out the Christmas shopping season or the holiday shopping season. And this is a trend we see a lot of people trying to engage because they're trying to minimize the steep peaks that we normally see. Like last year, we had like a very heavy spike for shipping season. So whatever you can do as a retailer to smooth out that curve, it's one of the things we would encourage you to do because we can tell you, all of these carriers, all the carriers we use as a customer, we consume about $250 million a year on carrier services. Those carriers we use have had a really hard time managing expectations, hitting SLAs. It's been across the board, both domestically and internationally. And so whatever you can do when you see these types of volumes coming to spread out the curve, I think it's an important thing for you to consider. Justin, is there anything you'd like to share on this slide?
I actually did want to. I want to talk about two things. One was probably a slide back, but first I want to reinforce that spreading out the curve is probably the single most important thing that customers can do in order to minimize the amount of peak season surcharges that they might be getting from the carriers, things of that nature. And really what it comes down to is there is only so much capacity. And when you look at that early second quarter spike in transactions, that's what we're seeing across all of our customers as well. And to combat that, to try to prevent the spike that you saw at the end of every year normally, we're actually encouraging our customers to try to get as much shipped out as possible. Many of them are still trying to actually use their stores as for deployment locations. We'll talk more about that later. But the other thing that a lot of companies are doing is they're trying to set the expectations. Last year, everybody thought they could order things a day or two before Christmas and have them delivered next day on their doorstep, and that caused a little bit of problems. This year, I think most of the consumers now, as some of this data shows, are much less interested in getting that super fast next day shipping, and they're really interested in more of the free shipping at this point in time. But that means we need to set our customers' expectation early. We need to encourage them to purchase earlier in the season in order to spread out that curve. Rick?
I think that's right. And across the board, we're seeing all kinds of strategies that people are engaging in to help consumers manage expectations around what's realistic. So it's a good thing for you to think about. So I think we have another poll here that we'd like to put in front of everybody. We're going to spend a few minutes and we're going to talk about how consumers' attitudes towards delivery have changed. Aaron, can you give us the next poll, please? Well, sales is definitely not the problem. That's what this poll indicates. I think the one that jumps out to me and has the personal experience is having enough healthy labor to process and fulfill orders. I've seen many of our customers who have their own fulfillment operations have expressed this challenge. We've had folks who've had to shut down their fulfillment facilities because they've had outbreaks within their facilities, and it's impacted their staff. We've also had some, we run a few fulfillment centers and about a couple dozen parcel processing facilities, and we've certainly had a few challenges there, and we've been very fortunate in terms of what we've done, but it's something that really hits home that I think a lot of people are experiencing. And certainly the costs, everything has gone up. Everybody is seeing these rising costs, and it's across the board. Justin?
Yeah, so I'd like to quickly address all three of the big ones there. Enough carrier capacity to ship all the orders. What we're seeing in the industry is so many customers now who have always been, sometimes some of them are single carrier, are now moving to as many carriers as possible, leveraging the regional carriers where they can. Some people even line hauling into a regional's area in order to siphon off some of that capacity in order to stay beneath their pandemic caps and things of that nature. With labor, in the past, it's always been about automation. It's always been about the appropriate HR steps to maintain. Now, of course, with the health issue, it becomes a lot more difficult. But what we have seen is customers accelerate their actual ship from store processes, such that during the rolling lockdowns that we see in some states, some are on, some are off, those stores can be reclassified as dark stores and actually be used as a warehouse, not only keeping that trained labor available and in use for when that store can become a normal store, but also making sure that you continue to activate and mobilize all the inventory, all the very expensive inventory that might be in that location. And of course, I don't think there's anybody who's not affected right now about the shipping and fulfillment costs. And quite frankly, that's where, by adding more carriers, by having an automated system that will actually check the appropriate cost to meet a customer's expectation that I talked about a little bit earlier. If a customer is expecting something in 5 days, well, we can probably use a postal service. If somebody is expecting something tomorrow, well, depending upon where they are from that origin, whether that's a warehouse or a store, we could probably use a ground service if they're zone 2. If they're further than that, we're probably going to have to use either a regional carrier's next day service or maybe a major carrier's next day service. So all of those things should be taken into account, but they need to be taken into account quickly.
No, I would say I can't underestimate how important it is to have the right carrier mix. And if you've got a primary provider who's doing most of your volume, make sure you've got a backup or 2 or 3. And you should also take this time. We've got a few weeks left before peak really hits, where you can evaluate what is the right carrier mix. What are the options that I have on the table? Carriers are coming to folks and saying, look, we need a commitment on what your volume is going to be. And if you have too much variance in there, then you're either not going to have capacity or you're going to be charged a lot more for us to handle these parcels on your behalf. So I think it's a really critical window you have right now to look at the appropriate carrier mix. And I will say one thing for everybody to think about, and I know the USPS has been in the headlines maybe for some of the wrong reasons over the last few weeks, but one of the things that we've observed is, even with the dramatic increase in volume, and I think the postal network from a parcel perspective is up more than 40% year over year, what we're seeing and what Postal has indicated to us is, even with that dramatic increase in volume that's now sustained and fantastic for Postal, their performance levels are now back to pre-COVID performance. So the SLA on a priority mail, a first class parcel, or a parcel select delivery, those are now very close to what they were pre-COVID. So you think about that, we're in a sustained peak volume period. Like, this is like peak last year. I mean, we've jumped so much, and yet the Postal Service has managed to address many of the operational issues. And so you should think about them as a backup solution if you're not already using them. It's great to have them set up. It's great to make sure you've got your shipping software configured so you can access them. And if something happens with UPS or FedEx or the other carriers that you're using, you've got a great option there. In fact, now is a great time for you to do a test. Try it out, see if it's working.
Yeah, and one last thing to add there. The nice thing is, even though this is going to be the first year that the United States Post Office has peak season surcharges, they don't have caps, and they don't have surcharges based upon those caps. The majors right now are basing things. One of them is actually basing it off of the volume you shipped with them in February. So if you've got both of the major carriers and you are primarily one over the other, you may not be able to count on that secondary carrier as a cost-effective means of shifting your volume. You may have to be looking at postal as well as the regionals. Rick, back to you.
So consumers have become less sensitive to the speed of delivery for discretionary purchases. One of the trends that we started seeing last year was the opposite of this. People wanted stuff freer and faster. Now they're like, dude, I'm at home all day. I've got boxes upon boxes sitting on my front porch. I'm not worried about when the next box is going to show up. I haven't even broken down all the cardboard boxes from the last delivery. I'm a little less worried about that than before. And what we see is, if you double click on the data, is that these patterns, the green here is the speed of delivery is not important to me now. So you can see that for certain categories like clothing or toys, hobbies, and gifts, again, there's been a pretty substantial shift in terms of what consumers' preferences are. So this gives you some flexibility as you look at the carrier mix that you're bringing to your customers. Think about, well, look, as long as I let my customer know what the expectation is, they're okay with it being a little slower. So you should just think through the options that are available, because you don't always need to spend the premium amount to get the product there in next day or 2 days or even 3 days in some cases. It can take a little bit longer. Just set the expectation with your customer, and you'll find that, in this new era, there's an opportunity for you. Justin, anything you would like to add to this?
I think you touched on another thing. It's about that expectation, right? So if a customer, there are some things, basically things at the bottom of the pyramid that customers want really, really fast. They're probably going to be looking for a delivery via a local, something like Instacart, DoorDash, something of that nature. Whereas you go up that pyramid, as long as they know when they're going to get it, as long as they know it's back ordered and it'll come in 2 weeks and then it'll get shipped to them in 5 days, what we're seeing here is that customers are so much more comfortable as long as they understand that expectation. So that's really the thing. And of course, setting that in the e-commerce suite, that part of the enterprise software stack is really the place to start and end that.
And I want to hit that Instacart point. I mean, I never used Instacart pre-COVID. Now my wife won't let me go to the grocery store unless I'm like wearing a full surgical kit. So going to the grocery store is really not an option. So I'm using that Instacart, and my preferences have changed. Right now I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have been using this before. It saves me so much time, and the amount they charge me is minimal. And also, when I'm not the one in the store shopping, I'm buying a lot less junk food. So it's actually been a good thing for me in that respect.
Exactly.
So again, this goes back to people are sitting in their homes, they're here all day, and one of the byproducts of this is that people are tracking their packages less often. So in light of the coronavirus, how often do you check the status of your package? This is the question. And so the number of people who never check the tracking status has increased to 12%. The number of people who only track it on the day the item is supposed to be delivered or the day that you're notified the item is shipped, those two categories are about 47%, and collectively it's about a 10% shift from people who used to check multiple times a day or daily. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that this data is different depending on which generation you are. So boomers, Gen X, were a little less worried about when our stuff's going to arrive. It'll get here when it gets here. Gen Z, they got a lot of angst going on about when their stuff's going to arrive. So I think this is an interesting insight, because this is a real shift from what we saw. We've seen previous to 2020, we had seen increases in the number of tracking events that consumers receive and consume, the number of times they're hitting a website for tracking.
Yeah, and Rick, I think this slide really is two separate tales. Up at the top here, we're seeing that in general, consumers' anxiety on shipping has really dropped. Right? They're still interested in it. They're still tracking packages, just not as frequently as they used to. And down on the lower portion, we're really just seeing what the expectation is for the generations that are ordering your products. So as long as you can provide the ability for them to track multiple times per day, and very importantly, since it's a primary leader in all of the age groups, be able to do a good daily check on where their packages are, you're probably going to have more satisfied customers because they have less anxiety to begin with.
Now, one of the interesting things is that 1 in 10 Americans have signed up for non-food subscription boxes. So this is a COVID experience, and so 2/3 of people have not signed up and do not plan to sign up for a subscription box. About 14% of consumers have planned to sign up for a subscription box, and then you have this group of people who've signed up for subscription boxes. There's a shift here. I plan to sign up to avoid shopping in store. There's a small percentage of people who signed up before the coronavirus, and there's also a 3% who say, yes, I signed up because it's more convenient. So if you take that, it's about 11% when you add it up, and the rounding works here, were people who find they're able to get the products they want at a better price, more conveniently. You've got, again, a 10% shift. So what you should consider as a retailer is there a subscription box solution that makes sense for your products and your consumers? Something for folks to consider. So let's take a few minutes and let's talk about how attitudes towards returns have shifted. So it's one of the interesting things. So again, we put a survey out there in light of the coronavirus outbreak. How likely or unlikely would you be to use each of the following return options, assuming all options are free? So we wanted to level set. Not going to charge you anything for this. We just wanted to get your consumer preference, if it's all the same price. The overwhelming choice, the thing that they're most likely to pick, is a home pickup. Pack the item yourself and have your regular mail carrier pick it up at your home. 53% of people said they would choose to use this option. On the drop-off side, the next option, the next preference that people say they would go for is pack the item yourself and drop it off at a carrier location. You can take it to the UPS store. You can take it to the post office. That's the second preference people have. And again, you go from about 53% of consumers would pick that as an option versus 45% who'd be willing to actually go drop it off themselves. I know that's not me. I don't like having anything in the back of my trunk because I'll sometimes forget about it, especially since I'm not driving so much. The next option that people have is to let the carrier pick the item for you. Is a pretty big drop off. Now, the one that's at the bottom of this is return to the retailer's closest store. So this is the option that people are least interested in. And I know there's a buy online, pick up in store is an option that people are promoting, and some people want to have a buy online, return in store. Given the health concerns that people have, especially around returns, if I really don't want to go in there and look at something, and I've already said I'm starting to prefer to shop online more now, consumers are telling you, they're telling all of us, hey, don't make me go to your store to return something. Give me an easy option, ideally something where somebody's going to come to my house and it's free, and I'll give it to my postal carrier, they can pick it up and take it away from me. This is an option that will make your consumers happier with your products, and it goes back to that whole post-purchase consumer experience. How do you manage that? How do you delight the customer even when they have something that didn't work out the way they wanted it to? Justin?
Yeah, and Rick, I think it's really a hard lesson that a lot of retailers are going to have to take in. They don't need to get rid of the buy online, return in store option because, of course, as we move out of this pandemic, there's great advantages to that. But we're always going to have a home pickup option if we want to retain that customer long term. Because if they dislike their return experience, the odds that they're going to buy from you, that they're going to do things such as bracketing and all these other things that we're seeing with an e-commerce type customer, they can't they can't use that type of solution, that bracketing solution, if they don't like the return process.
Hey, Justin, not all of our listeners are familiar with some of the technical terms. What do you mean by bracketing?
Oh, great question, great question. So bracketing, so let's say I order a shirt and it's just a t-shirt, but I'm not sure, am I a medium? Does this company run really small, so I need to get a large? Or maybe I need to get a small because the company's shirts run big. This is probably a little more applicable in shoe sizes and things of that nature. But really, you buy the size you think you are, and then you buy the size above and below it, or you buy the color you think you like, and then you buy the second and third, or maybe just the second choice, and you return the one that you don't want. Basically giving you the effective shopping experience that you would have if you were to go into the store. You'd actually be able to try different things on. And being able to do that makes customers significantly more comfortable with using that bracketing process, buying around what they like, picking what they want, and then coming back to you again the next time they want to buy something, because they're going to feel comfortable that they're only going to be paying for the parts and pieces they actually want. Rick, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that it's a really relevant point, and you got to think about how do you manage that returns process when people have multiple items. So if I've purchased 3 things, I know I'm going to return 2. How are you making it easy for your customer to return that product to you? Are you putting a poly bag in with your packaging materials that's pre-addressed? What's the process they have to go through to print out that label? Because if you can put in a really efficient flat rate poly bag that maybe gets cubic pricing, you're going to save so much money on your returns. And if you can take a little bit of time and you want to go a little slower, it's less priority for you to get that product back, you can even take a deferred return process. So these are options you should consider. How do you provide materials that make it easy for your consumers to return? What's the process they go through? And then what's the service you're going to do? Especially if, again, maybe you're going from a private carrier solution where you would have asked somebody to take it to a carrier store, and instead you're saying, look, just pick it up from my home. So you need to think through all of these options, because you can save a tremendous amount of money just by making sure you combine the packaging with that returns experience that you're going to see. So here's an interesting one. Have you decided against purchasing a product online because the only way to return the product requires you to leave your home and go to a physical location? 44% of consumers have made this decision. So think about that. You've got a returns policy on your website. If I buy something from you, or I'm considering buying something from you, I'm going to pause if you're going to make me return that product to a store that I don't want to go to, or you're going to make me go to the strip mall to take it to the mail and parcel center there that I don't necessarily want to go to. Don't torture me. Don't force me to do something I want. Give your consumers the options they want. Justin, any thoughts on this?
The thing I was just thinking is, don't increase my anxiety. We talked a few slides back about how we're already trying to calm down and just let the products get to us when they get to us. The last thing we want to do is add more anxiety to people. And what your polls here are showing is going around, going into stores, going into places where other people are, it's just increasing their anxiety.
I think that's right. And when we think about how we run our business, one of the wildly important goals our group president gave us when we started the year was to delight the customer. And it's kind of weird for a shipping and technology company to really think about that. It's like, but really, we want to delight the customer. We want to make sure that we're delivering a superior, our merchant experience, as well as the consumers, the customers of our merchants. So that is something that we've really focused on in a business, and we think it helps to reduce that anxiety and stress and creates the stickiness of the post-purchase experience. So what is the new normal? Well, here's the headline, folks. Buying patterns for about 20% of consumers have changed. So if you look at the blue on the left, I expect to shop in store more often. That is interesting. On the far right, I expect to shop online more often. This is the big shift. It's over on the right-hand side is 20% of consumers are going to go stay in the online world. They're not going back to that retail experience. So some people are going to go back to their preference of going into the store, but a big chunk, 1 in 5 of your customers, is now saying, hey, I'm liking this online experience. I want to stick to it. My friend Monica, who runs the Posh Moon, she's seeing that. She has customers who know her products, like her products, and they will buy them from her online, which is something she never had before. So now she can move more inventory more conveniently. She shifted how she engages with their customers, and actually people are liking it. So this is it's an interesting thing for all of us to pay attention to. Now, I think I saw a quote earlier. I put a quote up earlier from PayPal, where they're a customer of ours, and we were having a conversation with some of those folks, and they're like, "Look, we've seen, and this is all publicly available information. They've seen 4 years of growth in 4 months, and this is an established, dominant e-commerce payments platform, right? Just fundamental shift. You used to go to the farmer's market. Used to pay cash, now everybody's paying with PayPal and Venmo. Similar things, like people's buying patterns are changing across the board. Consumers, and what we see is this is a 5 to 10 year jump from e-commerce, depending on the segment in the industry. Consumers are less demanding about fast, but not free delivery. Customers are willing to wait longer for the right non-essential product. I think, Justin, you had a great example we were talking about earlier, which was, if you know the product you want, in your case, I think it's weightlifting equipment, you don't want to get something a little bit faster. You're willing to wait a little bit longer to get that right product. So people care more about the quality of the experience, and they're willing to wait just a little bit longer to get the right products, especially if it's not food or something that's a medicine that you need right away. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, I don't know if any of you had to buy an appliance recently. My poor dishwasher is 12 years old, and it was in the last legs, right? And so I had to get a new dishwasher, and I did all the consumer research, looked for what I thought was the perfect product, and it was not available. There's no inventory, and I thought, I can suffer for a few more weeks, but I want to make sure I get the right dishwasher. I don't want to get some dodgy product with a name with 6 consonants in it on Amazon that I've never heard before, that looks like it's got a bunch of fake reviews. I want to get a real product from Best Buy that I know is high quality, that Consumer Reports has given me the review on. And I waited 4 weeks to get my dishwasher, right? I mean, I nursed my old one along, but I got the product I wanted, and I was really happy with it, right? And previously, I would not have waited for that. I would have tried to find a way to force that through, but I think all of us have come to accept, okay, we're willing to wait that extra time to get what we want. The other thing is subscription boxes, as we've said, they're up 11%. So if you have an opportunity to do this, this is something you should definitely look at. And consumers are making decisions to not purchase if you give them a returns option that doesn't resonate with them. So you should really think about that when you look at your policies on your store and the returns methods that you expose to your customers. Justin, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think you've got it covered. I mean, again, I just can't help but think as I look through this, it's all about making life easier on your customers. I used the word anxiety before, but that's really what the goal is that there's so much more that customers have to worry about right now, between finding their own jobs, between making sure they can pay the rent, all these other things that are putting societal stress on them right now. If you want them to buy your product, it's got to be easy, right? It's got to be easy to buy. It's got to be easy to return, and they have to be pretty comfortable that it's going to get to them. Maybe not tomorrow, but it's going to get to them in a reasonable amount of time. So that's what I keep looking at.
So the question we would ask is, what does this mean for peak shipping season? If we look at this data. So what are realistic expectations and strategies for peak shipping? Retailers still need to offer free shipping. It's an option that consumers love. You need to make returns easy and, if possible, free. Can you handle the increased order volume? Do you have the right inventory? Do you have your staff set up? Do you have the right PPE? Are your operations organized? Are you using the right shipping software that helps you make smart decisions around your carrier mix? And is your website set up to process things the right way? Do you have a solution that will scale and handle the orders that are coming in? And remember, the consumers really desire convenience. People expect shipping delays. It's just the new normal now is things take a little bit longer to get here. We've managed to reset our anxiety about when it's going to arrive. Just let your customers know what's happening. So make sure you've got a notification engine that captures those events and communicates to your customers, hey, this package is going to be delayed a day, 3 days, a week. People know what to expect. They're not going to be angry with you as long as you meet those expectations that you've set. And if you can, you should consider offering a subscription service.
Yeah, and part of the other half of this is we've been talking so much about the customer and the customer experience, but part of providing a great customer experience is having a well-integrated enterprise software stack behind it, right? Do you actually have visibility of the inventory to the stores that might have just been in a lockdown city? Do you have visibility to what your 3PLs might have? Have you taken the time to set up 3PLs to go forward? So, all right, I know we're running a little tight on time. Rick, let me throw it back to you so we've still got time for questions.
So volumes are higher. Make sure you've got your software organized. So we take 2 minutes, do the little commercial bit here. What's going on with Pitney Bowes and ProShip? Hey, we've got a new partnership. We're now an integrated carrier option within the ProShip universe. So if you need to get your USPS, priority mail, first class parcel products that are over the counter, your international USPS products, those are all available, as well as the other Pitney Bowes standard services. Pitney Bowes is one of the largest USPS parcel consolidators. We have a similar solution to UPS MI and FedEx SmartPost, and we also have tools that give you a great post-purchase consumer experience. But we've got standard and expedited returns. We've got standard and expedited outbound shipping. So again, if you're looking at carrier mix options, we've got a few things to bring to the table, and we can help your customers receive a better post-purchase consumer experience. A little bit about Pitney Bowes. You may not know this. We are the largest revenue partner to the U.S. Postal Service. We process quite a few packages a year. These are some of our customers, very large folks like Amazon, Etsy, Alibaba, Victoria's Secret, Macy's, QVC. These are people who trust Pitney Bowes to manage their technology and manage the physical delivery of goods. And you know, we are doing things at scale, and I got to tell you, like, it's been really exciting to see the growth that we've experienced as a business over the last few years. So we've got a standard delivery services, we've got standard returns, we've got expedited delivery. We've got a national network, we've got customs processing, custom returns processing that we can handle for you. We can do both domestic and international services. So full enchilada if you need it. If you need another set of carrier options, as our sales team says, we've got the full enchilada if you need some help. Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I definitely do. With ProShip, we execute for 25% of the top 100 retailers who ship parcel. That number just continues to grow for us. We build and we work very closely with the carriers, hence our relationship with Pitney Bowes, to ensure that the technology you need is in place to execute. We do have some very advanced technologies such as advanced date shopping, which allows you to guarantee a date to your customer and provide the lowest cost to your operations folks in order to meet that date, as well as many other things. But what I really want to talk about is that the purpose of a piece of software like ProShip is when we look at the complexity on a slide like this. Now, a business should have to look at this once, understand it the way they need to use it at that point in time, and then just set it and forget it. Right? And that's what technology like ProShip would do, is we would help you to, whether it's an annual review, of once every 3-year review, whatever the case may be, help you understand what your carriers are capable of providing you, help you automate those solutions, and so you can just let it run, whether that's being shipped from store, whether that's being shipped from a warehouse, or whether you are whether you're telling your suppliers, manufacturers, 3PLs, etc., how you actually want something shipped in order to meet your customer's expectation.
Well, it looks like we've got a few questions here from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. So Justin, Rick, great information. Appreciate you covering all of that with us. This question will go to both of you. Rick, I'll start with you, and then Justin, please come in after that. It asks, we have evolved from single channel to multi-channel to omni-channel. What could be the next advancement to the service provided to different channels in the future?
Well, it's funny. I think people always want to add more and more channels. I think if you look at the polling question, the sales isn't really the issue. I think the thing to look at is not how many channels do you have, but how well are you executing against those channels, and how effective are your operations. We have our own fulfillment facilities. We've got a few million square feet of space that we use for that on behalf of our customers. And I got to tell you, like, we have continuous improvement is the mantra in those facilities. Make it better, invest in the right technology, and make sure that we're improving the processes so that we can execute those orders better, get the cost down, deliver a superior customer experience. I think that's something to look at. Justin?
Yeah, I think that really making sure that you've done all these things. I'm amazed at the number of companies that still have not actually completed that. They may be able to ship from store, but it's not actually integrated into their OMS. It's not actually integrated back into their CRM, so they're informing their customers. There's still a lot of manual or very inefficient and therefore very unflexible solutions in the market right now. And when I say solution, I mean because it's a combination of multiple pieces of software in order to truly become a large, whether it's a retailer, B2B, now manufacturers are selling direct to consumer as well as direct to businesses. There's a lot of cleanup that still needs to be done in the industry. And I don't know that as part of that, we're actually going to be seeing what the next vision is, besides actually just the communication to the customer is really probably where the next set of steps will be made in that omni-channel solution.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that the customer you have is the customer you should keep. So once you've sold something to them, you should try to get them to have a great experience because they will come back. And if you delight them, if you delight your customer, they will say good things about you online or word of mouth. And so I think it's really critical in this time where more and more of us are stressed out. We're worried about the cost, the efficiency of our operations, the health of our workers. Are we going to be able to do everything? And you're so stressed out about just keeping the lights on, keeping the wheels on the wagon to some extent, that you sometimes lose sight of that consumer experience when it comes to shipping. And so just think through that, because what we're seeing more and more is people are really investing in that post-purchase consumer experience. So I think that is one of the channels that folks really need to explore and execute well.
Very good. Moving right along, Rick, what is the prevailing wisdom of how USPS will perform?
Well, I think that that's a really good question. And so, we've actually been, as you would imagine, as the largest revenue partner to the U.S. Postal Service at about $17 billion. We move a lot of parcels and a lot of old school letter mail through the U.S. Postal Service. And we've been talking to them about performance. And, what they've told us is at this time, there are no capacity issues. There are no caps on their performance. And they've also put in place routing rules so that they can handle shifts that need to happen if there are performance issues in their network. They've also been working closely with us and other partners who do consolidation. And, we've been giving them forecasts on what we think the volume is going to be. We've put in place mutual plans where we figured out how can we help them when we do our zone skipping operations. What are the places where we should be injecting parcels into the network so we have a superior experience. So these things are really important from really important to do from an operations planning perspective. And we can tell you, like priority mail and first class parcel, these products are performing at pre-COVID levels.
Another question, Justin, for you. How cost effective and efficient will last mile delivery be in the current scenario?
Well, I'm going to interpret this question because last mile is a loaded term, right? So depending upon who you pick for your last mile, I think is extremely important. The reason I say this is because you may have the ability to use regionals. You may have the ability to use um, uh, DoorDash and Postmates and others of that nature. I think really it comes down to two things. One, making sure those are available for you, and number two, charging the customer properly while rate shopping on your own on the back end. Because if you've got something that can be delivered by a regional like OnTrack, and for your Sparks, Nevada warehouse, well, that could probably be cheaper, especially in the northwestern states, to use that rather than. But let the software actually make that decision for you in real time.
Very good. All right, another question, maybe two, as we wrap up. Rick, I'll put this to you. This question asks, with UPS and FedEx putting allocations on shippers' volumes during the peak season, how do you see the USPS performing with the influx of that excess volume likely to come their way?
Well, I think as I said, the Postal Service is planning for a pretty hefty spike in volume. I think that as long as some of their largest customers, like Amazon, are working proactively to smooth the curve in terms of performance, and we would encourage all of you to do that. But that said, they're expecting pretty strong volume, and I think they're going to be ready for it. That's my expectation.
All right, well, we are going to leave the conversation there, everyone. Lastly, Justin, Rick, thank you again for delivering all this timely content to us. We really appreciate you both sharing your expertise. To all of you who are here with us, you could have been many places this past hour. Thank you so much for your time and attention. All right, this concludes our Pitney Bowes webinar, everyone. Have a great day, and with that, we are done.